Welcome to the Ranchonomics podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Emilie Hopson, welcome to the Ranchonomics podcast. Great to have you here today. I'm excited to visit with you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Emilie, you live in a world that is often maligned, and we're going to get into human resource management here in a little bit. But having seen lots of episodes of The Office, I think I'm pretty familiar with HR and how that works. And you're going to explain that to us, a little bit of the less of reality TV and more in the real world. But first, give us a quick introduction to who you are, where you live, what you do.
Yep. I am Emilie Hopson, and my husband, Zach, and I live in East Texas, Nacogdoches, Texas. We own about a 400-head cow-calf operation. Zach likes to dabble in the sell-by. He's done really well with that. I also have a small sheep herd that Zach likes to call my hobby herd. In my off-farm profession, I am an HR manager for Eaton Corporation. We are about 500 employees now. We manufacture transformers here in Nacogdoches, Texas, and I've done that for the last 7 years.
Awesome. And you guys have a couple of young kids, right?
We do. We've got Mary, who is 6, Cora, who is almost 4 this month, and then Conway, who I won't say is my favorite child, is 2.
I love it. Good. My wife spoils our baby boy too. So everybody has a favorite. All right. Well, let's jump into it. Tell us a little about what is HR or human resource management? What does it deal with? Why is it important? And why in the world would ranchers need HR? Isn't this some corporate thing?
It is definitely not a corporate thing, but it can be. And if you watch The Office, that is exactly what it is. So no need for me at all.
I love it. Good.
Just kidding. So, when you and I first started talking about HR, it comes with a bad reputation. People can think it's a lot of red tape, policies, handbooks, paperwork that they don't really have time for. But really at its core, it's just about the people in your business, which can be just you and your wife. It can be you and just one other person. Really what I'm trying to do and partner with you on here is helping improve the lives of the people in and around your business.
Awesome. Well, that's important. And as most of us, I find it fascinating that lots of us talk about, how important the people are in our businesses, but we often don't spend a lot of time actually working to improve the lot of the people in our business. Sometimes we kind of run over that. And as you allude to, Emilie has become part of our team and has been incredibly helpful on our team internally, of course, but also I've been excited because we can sort of offer Emilie's services to our clients where when someone's looking at hiring someone or someone is struggling with an org chart or struggling with job descriptions, those sorts of things, she's been willing to help with that. So that has been a lot of fun. So Emilie, you and Zach are part of the Executive Link program. And I think sitting in on those types of meetings and participating in that program with your own business led you to some light bulb moments and led you to really see some things of how HR could be important in our industry. So do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, that was really interesting. Zach and I would sit in board meetings and it was like, wow, the same problems that we see in manufacturing translate to the ranch problems. And almost every single challenge that we saw come up in these board meetings, ultimately at the root of it was a people challenge. And whether it's having the right people in the right spots or the right leadership, it was to its core a people challenge. And then Zach just kept encouraging me. He was like, you could really help a lot of people in our ranching world by just applying what you know and what you've learned over the years. By just, reaching out. And he finally pushed me in one of our Executive Link board meetings where he was like, you've got to get this on the agenda. And John, I think you facilitated that meeting where we were like, all right, what are we going to call it? And it was like, you know what? Let's call it Agri-Culture because nobody likes HR. Culture is what we're doing and what we're building and improving.
That's exactly right. And culture often becomes that sort of silent or quiet force that winds up guiding things, right? We hear over and over again, you either create your culture or the culture is created. But one way or another, you have culture in your organization. You can either be intentional about it or let it just happen. And I think when we get and recruit and train good people and then teach them our culture, we have a lot of opportunities to really change our business. Is that a fair statement?
100%.
When you do that at a 3-person company, husband, wife, and cowboy kind of situation, or a 500-person company, are the principles basically the same, or are there some major differences between them?
It doesn't matter if it's just a husband-wife team. We talked about it at the retreat. Culture is what you make it, and how you talk about your employees, how your employees talk about you on and off the ranch, it's a brand. And just like the stock market, your brand is either going up or going down. Very rarely does your brand stay stagnant.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, that's interesting to think about. And again, fits in with so many other things. I hear John Locke often quoted with what you just talked about, right? That ultimately all problems are people problems. I think we often focus so much on the other pillars of business, right? We follow a model where there are basically 5 pillars of business, right? Marketing and administration and sales and finance, HR being one of those important pillars. And then, of course, production, or whatever the activity of the business is that produces value. We have to have those other supporting pillars because otherwise the primary function can really fall apart if we're not careful. Okay, so let's go on to talk about hiring people. I'd like to hear a little of your thoughts about how we hire and what do we focus on, and then we'll get into some other things from there.
Yeah, so hiring the right person can make or break your business. And this example here that I watched, it's a 2-minute YouTube video. If you get a chance, go out and look at Simon Sinek's performance versus trust concept.
We will put a link to that in the show notes.
Perfect. It's talking about high performers, low performers, medium performers, and how in our businesses, we're only really focusing on performance. Are people doing what they asked you to do? And so few and far between are we just looking at the trust aspect of it, right? And so he kind of plays off of a joke. He was talking to some Navy SEALs, and he's like, I may trust you with my life, which is the performance, but do I trust you with my money and my wife? Which is hilarious when you think about your employees on a ranch. And I honestly would take somebody who has never worked on a ranch before, who is very moldable and willing to learn, versus somebody who they've got all of these years of experience, but they're stuck in their ways and they cause drama, or, they can't get along with the other employees or even you. And it's like, we want people on our ranches. We want to hire people who are trustworthy and are going to take ownership and treat the business like you would as an owner.
Yep. And I think when we think about those things, especially when we're new at hiring people, we tend to prioritize all of the wrong stuff, right? And that trustworthiness, that eagerness to learn, that, growth mindset, all of those things are things that when we prioritize those, we put ourselves in a much better position to succeed in the long term.
Yeah, for sure. So I just thought, if you don't know where to start with the hiring and you're like, what is she talking about with this trust? How do I gauge trust in a 15-minute interview? One of the things that I've always loved to do is take your ideal candidate to lunch, whether it's on the ranch or whether you go to town and eat at your favorite restaurant or cafe. Sit down and eat a meal with them. And when those walls come down, you're going to figure out really quickly who that person is and can you work with them every day. And that's a simple way to start of hiring right, is just, break those barriers down.
Yep. And everybody can be nice and kind and on their best behavior for a 15-minute interview, right? Or a 30-minute phone call, that sort of thing. It's hard to judge when I don't know about you. I think it's true for you at your full-time job. Like, I spend more time with the people I work with than I do with my spouse. And so when you spend that much time with someone, you really get to know them pretty well. And boy, I sure hope those are people I like and want to be around, right? It's not that we have to be like best buds or anything, but they have to be the quality and type of people that I want to be around.
Yeah, I can't tell you in my off-ranch job, I've got a group of people. It's a team like I've never seen. And it doesn't mean that work is not work and it's not hard and we don't put in a lot of hours, but we have fun. And having fun makes the bad days worth it.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. All right, well, let's go forward because Simon Sinek, as you brought it up, and we'll share that video, has a lot of great content on this and has a lot of great thoughts on it. If anybody's interested there, he has a ton of content on YouTube. And so we just talked about, sort of hiring for character as opposed to hiring for skills. let's talk about when we get someone there and we have someone already at the ranch and they're kind of underperforming. They're maybe doing just the bare minimum. And we would like some more ownership, some more stewardship, and a little more extra effort. How do we go about talking about that, dealing with that, et cetera?
Yeah, that leads into a great point of what I like to call discretionary effort. There's another great book, the Approachability Playbook, and it really talks about this discretionary effort. And what that means is when you're not looking, is that employee going to go the extra mile, or are they going to slack off? Are they just not going to do that little extra effort that you really need? And it's kind of the renter versus owner mentality, right? When I rent an apartment or I rent a home, do I really care that the next door neighbor had cigarette butts outside? Or am I really going to care about the walls or the floors or, what the countertops look like? But holy cow, the second you have a mortgage, you get frustrated when the kids barely put a scuff on the wall, right? And so it's the same thing in your business. We want our employees to feel a sense of ownership. And if they're treating your business like it's a renter's mindset, right? We've got to change that. And it's either up or out. We've got to have an owner mindset. And it starts with trust and vulnerability and building that relationship like we talked about before so they feel valued. When they show up, we got to make sure every day that they're putting in that extra discretionary effort.
Yep. And word to the wise, if you are an employee listening to this and want to stand out, I would argue that doing that sort of on your own is a great way to do that. And not everyone appreciates it. We understand that. But for oneself as a person, I think there's great value in really training yourself as an employee to live in that mindset and to really work that way. Because even if it doesn't seem like it, people do notice there is a difference and the outcome is often very different. Do you know somebody that's wrestling with serious medical issues and all the expenses that go with it? If so, go to hiscavvyfoundation.com, Cavvy spelled Cavvy, apply or nominate them for assistance from the foundation, where we help people in the ranching business get through those things together. Before we go to leadership, I want to talk about, this still is leadership, but if we as leaders want employees to take ownership, what's sort of the easiest way to work with that? To my mind, there's a concept of if you want someone to take ownership, then you probably better give them some ownership. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to give them, here, I'll give you 5% of the ranch. That's not necessarily what we're talking about. How do we do that? How do we create ownership as leaders of our business?
Yeah, that's a great point. For me, it starts with vulnerability. And in this ranching world, we are rough and tumble, right? It's a very male-dominated industry. Weakness and vulnerability aren't really the paramount of what you see traditionally. But if you can be that vulnerable, uncomfortable leader that doesn't necessarily know it all, it's going to be a trust-building thing. And so it can be, hey, I don't necessarily know how to break this pasture up and rotate it. Maybe you can help me and say, there's a challenge on your ranch and maybe you would do it a certain way. But if you collaborate with your employee and give them the chance to think through it on their own, and again, maybe it's not the way you would have done it, you gave that person the opportunity to think for themselves and then you executed on their initiative, it's going to make them feel good. And it's going to make them see, oh, I am a part of this. I do have a stake in it and I really can contribute and make a difference. And so at the essence of that vulnerability piece, that's when you really have leadership born and trust born.
And I want to clarify something here in the spirit of the television show, The Office. When we're talking about vulnerability, we're not talking about inappropriate sharing. We are talking about, hey, I have a problem I could use some help with. Is that right?
Yes.
And maybe I don't have the perfect answer. Maybe we're going to have to figure it out. Is that fair enough?
100%. You'll know it when you're in those moments. Like I said at the retreat, don't be weird. Right? But share and just be a human, because that's what you and I have talked about. Being a real, genuine human and having real relationships is all anybody really wants, whether you're the most rough and tumble cowboy or whether, you're my sensitive little 3-year-old angel. right? People just want connections and genuineness.
Yeah, I love it. Good. So you just mentioned it, and I'd like to mention that you spoke at our Ranch Right retreat this year down in Alabama at Orange Beach, and I was incredibly well received. You gave a fantastic presentation, and you started in a way that sort of surprised me. Self-worth was kind of where you began, and in the spirit of vulnerability, would you mind elaborating on that a little? Talk about that again.
Yeah, I think the reason I wanted to start with that is people have to be okay. I think mental health is kind of a buzzword in 2025. But what I want everybody listening to understand is that what we're doing on our ranches is not who we are. That's not where our self-worth comes from. We're fathers, husbands, wives, sisters, moms, dads. That's who we are. And so no matter how successful our operation is, how great our grazing plan is, or even on the flip side, how far in debt we are and trying to get out of those lines of credit and things like that, and all the things that our amazing team helps people with, I want people to understand who you are goes beyond the ranch business. It's truly something that people need to take some time and self-reflect, because when you understand that you separate yourself from the business, you're going to lead differently.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a concept we can repeat often enough. Even people that aren't in agriculture, but especially in agriculture, our jobs are so all-consuming, right? We think about this all the time. My wife will be the first to tell you, like, this is what we do with our minds constantly, and then our identity gets wrapped up in it. And before you know it, we've lost sort of the basic anchors of who we are and what's important, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Zach and I started a new show, Ted Lasso, if anybody has watched it. And one of the footballers or soccer players, he's a longtime player, really successful. But as the career went on and as he had to retire, he wasn't at his peak performance. And he was really struggling with, now that he's retiring, who is he as a person? And it was such an impactful scene because his little 6-year-old niece comes in and his friend is like, hey, when you see Uncle Roy, who do you see? And she just describes this wonderful human and never even used the words footballer. And it's the same thing on our ranches. Like, I bet you if you brought your kid in and said, hey, describe mom or dad, they're going to describe this warm, fun, outgoing person. They don't see you in that career. And so it's important that that's how we see ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. And anyone that has had that taken from them for any length of time, injury, bankruptcy, those sorts of things, that's where it's really important to have that locked down, because when some of those bad things happen, where we see real disaster, in my mind, in people's personal lives, is when they lose that tie to their identity, or they lose the ability to sort of fulfill their identity. And then that becomes a personal crisis, that can lead to all kinds of real bad endings.
Agreed. And it opens you up for feedback too. At the retreat, I was like, wow, we're going to have a whole group of people give me feedback on how I did. That makes you nervous. And then when you step back and go, hey man, this isn't who I am. All of a sudden I'm open to feedback because it's not personal. And it's the same thing with your employees or for you. If you don't make it personal and it's just a business and it's who we are, not saying that we shouldn't have passion about our businesses, right? A lot of us rely on these ranches. I'm not saying it's not a personal or a passion. I'm just saying you're going to be much more open to feedback and improvement if you see that truly it's not hurting who you are to your core. It's just feedback and improvements on what you're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And Emilie's referring to the fact that at the end of each day's presentation, we do an after-action review to talk about, what was good and what was bad. And Emilie saw that on the day's prior presentation and said, what? I'm going to have to stand in front of a group of 50 people while I evaluate the 4-hour presentation I just gave? I was like, wow, that does actually, when you say it like that, it sounds kind of harsh, but pretty friendly audience. They're pretty helpful. Anyway, all right, well, let's get a little more practical. If somebody's listening right now, they lead a ranch team and they want to improve them, what's a great place to start? So I've got a team of people, maybe don't think we're living up to our full potential. Where do I go first?
Super easy. Start with clarity and transparency. I'm not asking you to do a Word document or sit at the computer. Just ask yourself, what exactly am I expecting them to do? And if you don't have a clear answer, or they couldn't articulate exactly what they're expected to do day in and day out, then that's probably where your gap lies. And so for me, starting 101 with a clear job description or position statement, that's where we begin. And, if I said that to Zach, he would probably roll his eyes at me and say, we don't need paperwork here on this ranch. And I'm not talking about a long corporate document. I'm not talking about something that's so complex and has 100 bullet points that nobody even wants to start reading it. It can be a very, very simple, handwritten in a notebook in your truck of, man, if you can focus on these 3 things, that's what I expect out of you. All of a sudden, you've got clarity, you've got transparency, your employee is going to appreciate it. Heck, you can even apply this concept to your marriage. And hey, these are the 2 things that I would like for you to work on. And all of a sudden, your emotional bucket is kind of getting filled because I know exactly what I can go do and improve. And everybody can feel good and get a win out of that.
I love it. Very good. And you have some tools to help people with that. Is that right? Because when I start down this process, sometimes I just don't know where to start.
I do. I've got a really simple 2-page document that's like a fill in the blank, and it's got some pro tips in there, and we can get that to you guys. And it makes life simple when you're going to do a position description or a job description. And it's actually really fun to, you may think that you want a ranch hand or you want a grazing specialist, but when you go to start filling that out, it starts thinking in your mind, oh, do I really need this or am I looking for something else? And I encourage people to use that tool with more than one person. Don't do it in a vacuum because you get some outside perspective that's super helpful.
Yeah, good. Really good. All right. So agriculture has gotten started. You've seen this need. You've seen a place in the industry where we have lots of room for improvements. My words, not yours. How does this help us build sustainable businesses that can last? The theme of our conference this year was all about growth. And one of the reasons I wanted you to be there was because I obviously have a biased opinion of how HR fits into growth and sustainability, but maybe give me your perspective on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people listening are great cattle managers. They're great land managers. But I think when it comes to managing people, they feel stuck or overwhelmed, or quite honestly, they just don't want to deal with it. And that's where I would love to help and partner. One of the things that I've said over the years is I love to help bring clarity to chaos, because when you can see through the storm, people are making better hiring decisions.
Explain you and Zach perfectly. I get it now. Okay.
Yeah, he is my chaos.
I love it. Very good.
But it's one of those things where sometimes when you're in the thick of it and you've got young children and you've got bills to meet and you got to pay your employees and you don't know if you're going to get to the end of the month, you have to have something in there that gives you that calm when there's chaos. And, even Zach and I had a discussion the other day when he felt like he had a lot going on. And I was like, just write it down. What are you trying to accomplish? What are the most important things? Get it out of your head. I can't tell you how many times we've been in church and he can't even focus on the message because he's thinking about the fence he has to fix. He's thinking about the cows that are out. And it's like, you got to take a step back. You got to have the right people in the right seat. You got to have clear expectations. And then ultimately, you just have to be able to lead with a little bit more confidence when you have that clarity.
Yeah, I love it. And that is one of those things. Wally Olson talks all the time about how our business is about relationships. And he uses that word intentionally to mean lots of different things. But when we have a good team around us and we are communicating effectively and people are taking ownership of their jobs, it is amazing how much better a ranch can perform. We, again, often give lip service to the fact that, the people are the most important resource, but very few of us actually take the steps to make that effective and to really put that into place. So, Emilie, this is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to before we go?
No, I would love to end with, the things we've talked about today. It's not about just doing the tools and walking away from it. Ultimately, what we're trying to accomplish here is trust and accountability, and so that you can improve your life and the lives around you. And taking the time to do it is so important.
Yeah, I find again and again, the greatest joys in my life come from working with people, and the greatest disappointments come from working with people. Amazing how that spectrum works. So fantastic. Well, Emilie, people can find you, I know, on our website. Agri-Culture has a website also. Is that correct?
I am working on it.
Okay. All right. So our website is the place to go find you. And then you and Zach, like I say, down in East Texas, you're actually putting this into practice on your operation. And I look forward to seeing all the things that are going to come out of this. So very excited to have you on our team. You've done great things for our team internally, and I really look forward to the things you're able to do for customers. So thank you very much. And I hope to have you back on the Ranchonomics podcast. So thanks for being here today.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.